The wind howled through the cracked windows of the old community center, carrying the scent of rain and rust. In the small town of Ashwood, where the steel mill's skeleton loomed over sagging rooftops, life moved slowly, like a river choked with silt. The people here were tough, their hands calloused from labor, their hearts hardened by loss. But tonight, in the dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Elliot Voss, a 17-year-old with eyes too old for his face, stood at the edge of the room, clutching a tattered notebook. His dark hair fell in uneven strands over his forehead, and his threadbare jacket hung loose on his wiry frame. He wasn't here for the community fundraiser, not really. He'd come to escape the chaos of his home, where his mother's coughing fits echoed through thin walls and his little sister Lila drew pictures to drown out the sound. The room buzzed with murmurs as Theo Hargrove, the millionaire who owned half of Ashwood's failing businesses, took the stage. At 62, Theo was a man of sharp edges, sharp suit, sharp tongue, sharp eyes that cut through people like glass. He'd made his fortune buying up struggling factories and flipping them for profit, leaving towns like Ashwood to wither. Tonight, he was here to play the philanthropist, dangling a check for $10,000 to save the community center. The crowd clapped politely, but their eyes were wary. They knew Theo's gifts always came with strings. "Generous, isn't he?" muttered Mrs. Callahan, the librarian, to no one in particular. Elliot, leaning against the wall, didn't respond. He was sketching in his notebook, a habit he'd picked up after his father left, when words stopped making sense. His pencil traced the outline of a broken clock, its hands frozen at midnight. Theo's voice boomed through the microphone. "Ashwood's got heart, I'll give you that. But heart doesn't pay the bills. You need vision. You need someone like me." He paused, scanning the crowd with a smirk. "Or maybe you need a miracle. Tell you what, find me someone who can heal me, and I'll write a check for $1 million. The room laughed nervously. Theo was known for his theatrics, but this was new. He tapped his chest, where a faint scar peeked above his collar. "This ticker of mine's been failing for years. Doctors, surgeries, pills, none of it works. So, go on. Fix me. $1 million says you can't." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Theo's heart condition was no secret. Tabloids loved speculating about his mortality, but his mocking tone stung. It was as if he was taunting their poverty, their powerlessness. Elliot's pencil paused mid-stroke. He glanced up, meeting Theo's gaze for a split second. Something flickered in the boy's eyes, not defiance, but curiosity. Elliot's life was a mosaic of small, quiet battles. His mother, Clara, had been a nurse until lung disease stole her strength. Now she spent her days in a recliner, an oxygen tank humming beside her. Lila, only 8, was the light of their home, but her laughter couldn't mask the bills piling up on the kitchen counter. Elliot worked odd jobs, mowing lawns, fixing fences, but it was never enough. At night, he poured his thoughts into his notebook, sketching memories of better days or writing poems no one would ever read. He wasn't a healer. He wasn't even particularly brave. But he knew pain, not the kind that showed on X-rays, but the kind that lived in silences, in the weight of things left unsaid. Maybe that's why Theo's words stuck with him. $1 million could change everything. It could pay for his mother's treatment, get Lila out of Ashwood, give them a chance to breathe. The next morning, Elliot found himself outside Hargrove Enterprises, a glass and steel monolith that clashed with Ashwood's crumbling brick. He didn't have a plan, just a stubborn spark in his chest. The receptionist, a woman with a tight bun and tighter smile, eyed his worn sneakers. "Mr. Hargrove doesn't see walk-ins." "Tell him it's about his offer," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. She raised an eyebrow, but picked up the phone. Minutes later, Elliot was in an elevator, rising to the top floor. Theo's office was a shrine to wealth. Marble floors, a mahogany desk, a view that stretched to the horizon. The man himself sat in a leather chair, swirling a glass of amber liquid. "You're the kid from last night," Theo said, not looking up. "What's this about?" Elliot swallowed. "Your heart. I can help." Theo laughed, a sharp bark that echoed off the walls. "You? A scrawny teenager? What are you gonna do, pray over me?" "I don't know yet," Elliot admitted. "But I'm willing to try. If I succeed, you pay. If I don't, you lose nothing." Theo leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Fine. 1 month. Impress me, kid, or you're out." He scribbled a number on a card, his personal line, and waved Elliot away. Elliot didn't believe in miracles. He believed in patterns, in the way people hid their truths behind masks. Theo's mask was arrogance, but beneath it, Elliot sensed something else. Fear, maybe, or loneliness. He started small, showing up at Theo's office with a thermos of chamomile tea. "It's calming," he said simply. Theo scoffed, but drank it. Over the next week, Elliot became a fixture in Theo's life. He'd wait outside the office, notebook in hand, sketching or writing, while Theo barked orders at employees. Sometimes Theo would glance at the drawings, fractured landscapes, faces half hidden in shadow, and mutter, "You're wasting your time, kid." But Elliot wasn't trying to fix Theo's heart with medicine. He was listening, watching, piecing together the man's story. Theo never spoke of family, but his office held clues. A faded photo of a young girl with Theo's eyes tucked in a drawer. A letter, unopened, addressed in looping handwriting. Elliot didn't pry, but he noticed. One evening, as rain battered the windows, Theo found Elliot in the lobby, soaked from walking across town. "Why do you keep coming back?" Theo snapped. "You think you're gonna save me with tea and doodles?" Elliot met his gaze. "I think you're more than your money, and I think you're tired of being alone." Theo froze, his face a mask of stone. Then he turned away. "Go home, kid." But Elliot didn't. He kept showing up, asking questions, listening to Theo's rants about business, about Ashwood's lazy workers, about a world that owed him everything. Slowly, Theo started talking, really talking, about his daughter, Mara, who'd run away at 16 after a fight he couldn't take back. About his wife, gone a decade now, whose death had turned his heart to ash before the doctors ever found a problem. About the emptiness that no amount of money could fill. Elliot wrote it all down, not as a confession, but as a map. He started leaving notes for Theo. Short, handwritten things slipped into his coat pocket. "You're not your mistakes. Mara's still out there. You can change." Theo never mentioned them, but he stopped throwing them away. In Ashwood, word spread about the strange kid trailing the millionaire. Some called Elliot a fool, others a hustler. Mrs. Callahan, though, saw something else. "You're not just after the money, are you?" she asked one day, catching him at the library. Elliot shrugged. "Money would help, but he's broken. Not just his heart. I think he needs to see it." Mrs. Callahan handed him a book on grief. "You're carrying a lot for someone so young." She wasn't wrong. At home, Clara's condition was worsening. Lila's drawings were darker now, full of jagged lines. Elliot's notebook was filling up, not just with sketches, but with ideas. He researched heart health, stress, the way emotions could tangle with biology. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew Theo's bitterness was poison. If he could help Theo let go, maybe the man's heart would follow. 3 weeks in, Theo invited Elliot to his mansion. The place was a mausoleum, cold, pristine, empty. They sat in a dining room that could seat 20, eating takeout from paper containers. Theo was quieter than usual, his sarcasm dulled. "You really think you can fix me?" he asked, almost soft. "I think you can fix yourself," Elliot said. "But you have to want it." Theo stared at his plate. "I don't know how." Elliot slid his notebook across the table. Inside was a sketch of Mara, based on the photo in Theo's drawer, her face softened by time. Below it, a single line: "Call her." Theo's hands shook as he closed the notebook. "Get out," he whispered. Elliot left, heart pounding. He'd crossed a line, but he couldn't stop now. The final week of the month was chaos. Clara was hospitalized, her lungs failing faster than the doctors could keep up. Elliot spent nights at her bedside. Lila curled against him, while days were split between school and Theo. The Millionaire was unraveling, snapping at staff, canceling meetings, staring at that notebook like it was a bomb. On the last day, Theo called Elliot to his office. The man looked older, his eyes bloodshot. "You failed, kid. My heart's still a mess. No million for you." Elliot nodded, unsurprised. "I didn't do it for the money." Theo's laugh was bitter. "Then why? To prove you're better than me?" "No," Elliot said. "To show you you're worth saving." He pulled out his phone and played a voicemail he'd found online, tracked down through a friend who knew Mara's old college roommate. It was her voice, hesitant but clear. "Dad, I saw you on the news. I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I'm in Portland. I miss you." Theo's face crumpled. For the first time, he didn't hide it. He cried, ugly, raw sobs that shook his frame. Elliot sat quietly, letting the moment breathe. When Theo finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "I don't deserve her." "Maybe not," Elliot said, "but she deserves you to try." The next day, Theo drove to Portland. He didn't tell Elliot, but the boy heard about it from Mrs. Callahan, who'd seen Theo's car tear out of town. When he returned, he was different. Still sharp, still flawed, but lighter. He called a meeting at the community center, the same place where it all began. The crowd was skeptical, expecting another publicity stunt. Instead, Theo stood at the podium. No notes, no swagger. "I've been a selfish bastard," he said, the words cutting through the silence. "I thought money was power. I was wrong. A kid, Elliot Voss, showed me what real strength looks like. He didn't heal my heart with medicine. He made me face it." He pulled out a check, not for $10,000, but for $1 million, made out to the Ashwood Community Fund. "This is for the hospital, for the schools, for you. And I'm selling the mill. The profits go to the workers, not me." The room erupted, some in cheers, some in disbelief. Elliot, in the back, felt his throat tighten. He hadn't fixed Theo's heart in the way the man had mocked, but he'd done something impossible. He'd helped Theo find his soul. Later, Theo found him outside, staring at the stars. "You knew I wouldn't pay you," Theo said, almost accusing. Elliot smiled faintly. I knew you'd do something better. Theo handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter to Mara, thanking Elliot for giving him the courage to reach out. Below it, a smaller check. Not $1 million, but enough to cover Clara's treatment and more. Don't argue, Theo said gruffly. You earned it. Clara came home a month later, her breathing steadier, her smile brighter. Lila drew a picture of the three of them under a sky full of stars. Elliot added it to his notebook, next to a sketch of Theo, no longer a caricature of wealth, but a man learning to be human. Ashwood didn't transform overnight. The mill's sale took time, and not everyone forgave Theo. But the community center stayed open, and the hospital got a new wing. Elliot kept writing, his words less about pain and more about hope. He'd learned something, too. Healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about seeing what was whole, even in the cracks. And Theo? He visited Mara every month. His heart still ticked unevenly, but it was lighter now, carried by a love he'd almost forgotten. In Ashwood, they started calling Elliot the kid who healed the millionaire. He didn't like the nickname, but he didn't mind the story. It was proof that even in a town of rust and ruin, one act of kindness could ripple forever.